I think the AI revolution or this, what we're seeing here is equivalent to, and maybe even greater than, the Industrial Revolution.
Things are changing, and especially with generative AI, there's a lot of stuff going around. I know we kind of talked about this in the past, but I think as we've been going through, the fog of war is lifting, and it's becoming very apparent that it's not a thing that's going to move out of the way. So we're going to have to live with it or something. Like it's going to change how I do my work going forward.
Yeah, I remember talking to you last week, and I just flat out said, I'm like, I don't think the full stack developer role is going to be the same in 10 years. Like what,
or existing.
Yeah, like what we do today is going to, like, there's no way that AI doesn't eliminate jobs to some degree.
Yeah.
It'll create jobs, but there are things that we pay people to do today that we will no longer pay people to do.
Yeah.
In a creative space, which we thought in the past was untouchable by computers. Like, this is a creative space. How can a computer do it? Generative AI has shown us that space is unsafe.
Yeah, whether it be images or just text or whatever, or like any of it.
Like there's a lot of people too that think, that this is. I have talked to business owners who, and they all sort of unanimously agree that if their business doesn't incorporate AI, they will be irrelevant in 5 years.
Yeah.
There is this like huge push to like do AI. You've talked to a lot of developers.
Yeah,
like,
and they got the opposite of just, like, and as we were just saying just now, what's going to happen to my job? Am I going to still have it? What's going to happen?
Yeah, they're worried that they either outright dismiss it, or they're worried that they're
going to be eliminated at some point.
And then there are people like the dismissers will say, well, this is like the .com bubble. Like, back when everybody thought that if you had a website, you were going to be worth $1 billion.
Yeah.
They equate it to that. And I do think there's some truth to that. Like, if you look at the companies who are racing to use AI, I don't think a lot of them are thinking about.
They just want to use it in some fashion.
They want to have AI in their product. They want to have generative AI in their name and their company.
It's like a buzzword almost, or it's quickly becoming a buzzword.
Yeah, it's like, remember when the cloud was like that, and as long as you had a Office 365 implementation, you could say that your business like operated in the cloud.
Yeah, like
even though your app was like stood up on like dedicated servers,
in the closet in your office.
Yeah, like that. The cloud was a buzzword that nobody really understood, but you knew you kind of had to do it. AI feels much the same, but the thing about a bubble and the thing about the .com bubble is the internet still lived beyond that.
Yeah, like, I mean, we're still using it today.
Yeah, it has. I don't think anybody can disagree that the internet has fundamentally changed the way that we do business, the way that we learn, the way that we consume information. It is saturated our lives in every way, shape, or form. And I think generative AI and AI in general is probably going to do much the same.
Yeah. And I think it's back to the point, like you mentioned, about back to the analogy of the .com bubble of, and you can even look back at a lot of those companies and, you go back to 2000, 90s, and you're going to see not everyone made it. And it's going to probably, I would expect a similar aspect with the AI. Not that company may or may not make it, but it's like you said, what's the use that they're going to have in it?
Yeah, some of our viewers are too young to remember the .com bubble, but there was a time in like the early 2000s where as long as you said that your business operated on the internet, investors would throw millions of dollars at you.
And that's what's happening right now with AI.
Yeah, you say that you do AI, you're generating models or you're training models, like investors are throwing billions of dollars. Nvidia's stock seems to have no ceiling in this.
And they just invested into 5 AI companies within the last couple of days, I think.
I sold some Nvidia stock and I'm regretting it because I I made money, but like
Yeah.
I could have made an extra $1,000 if I just waited 24 hours. Their stock is literally, it's going to break $1,000 a share.
Yeah. Sidebar and the whole thing. They're like, NVIDIA is one of the companies that didn't overhire people. And that's probably why their stock prices are so stable right now, is because they're not doing the massive layoffs, like whatever it is. They didn't overreact to.
Well, they're also like, the demand for their services is steady. Like,
Yeah.
whoever wins the AI like battle, they need NVIDIA's chips to do it.
Right, because you need having a GPU is going to do so much better. And what they're saying, what I've seen over the past several months is the idea of all the graphics cards that were used for Bitcoin mining and stuff that are kind of irrelevant now are getting shifted over to this generative AI for training or utilization.
Yeah, I attended a conference. This was probably back in November of last year, and one of the speakers was an advocate for AI, and he put up on the screen, he put up the IBM Watson, and he talked about like how one of these modules for Watson cost $100 million to like construct, and this was like the best supercomputer at the time. And then he slides to another picture, and it's this module that's like this big, and it is 10 times more powerful than that one of the Watson modules, and it costs $20,000. And companies are buying these in mass quantities and chaining them together, and this is sort of the foundation of how to train a learning model.
Yeah.
And these their NVIDIA has made these modules affordable, and they're able to produce them at scale in a way that nobody else in the marketplace is able to do.
Yeah, and these models, like there's a ton of them popping up. I think Microsoft just pumped in a ton of money into Mistral. So we're all familiar, I think, with ChatGPT or GPT in general. Like that's the predominant one that's in the news and everything like that. But there's so many other models that exist out there. And if you go to like the site that I know of, and especially if you start learning about LLMs, is like huggingface.co.
What is that?
It's a site that just distributes LLMs. So people can put it up there, and then people can download it.
It's like a marketplace.
Kind of,
but it's all free.
Some of them you have to like they're behind like subscriptions and stuff, depending on like whoever put it up there. Yeah. But like I got Olama, so I asked Meta for permission, and they're like, "Sure, you got it. Now I can use it. I can download it and use it." There's like medical LLMs that are just toward medical diagnosis. There's ones that are for teaching. Like the gamut is wide.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, to create a large language model costs billions of dollars and millions of computation hours to do. But once the LLM is created, to use that LLM and to run it can be done on your cell phone. Like the barrier to entry to use an LLM or to even refine an LLM is much lower than it is to build one.
Yeah, and a lot of these things, what they do is these models is they're branching off of existing ones and then fine tuning it toward their needs.
Yeah, no, most people in the AI space are not building LLMs. They're fine tuning, refining, training existing and established ones and using them in series. Like you might have an LLM that's really good at, predicting outcomes. You might have another one that's good at like validating those predictions, and another one that can generate the instructions for the prediction. And you got these, they're all kind of working in unison for like an outcome.
And that's a space that's now up and coming, and that's known as using agents for that. So a different agent might be using a different model, but they kind of cohesively do something.
Yeah. So that's like the 10,000 foot AI view. And as part of all that, it's being really disruptive to our space, the software development space. And I think the AI revolution or this, what we're seeing here is equivalent to, and maybe even greater than the Industrial Revolution. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, easily.
Like and the reason I say that is, what did the Industrial Revolution effectively do?
Well, I mean, so one is it increased speed in factories. It lowered costs. It also eliminated a ton of jobs, but it also created a bunch too, as we've been talking about. Wages went up because people had to be more specialized in how to maintain those machines. And it just changed how people lived.
But why did it change how people lived? Why did it eliminate jobs? Why did it do all of those things that you said it did?
because it just made things better.
Why?
Because it industrialized. Well, I mean, like I said, it increased speed and productivity as things.
It essentially eliminated the need for human strength. Human
strength and human dexterity, right?
Yeah,
because like you can only do 100 things today, but with this machine now, 10 times.
We literally measured cars in horsepower. Like there was a like what a horse could do or what a human could do. Those were considered like ceilings that couldn't be breached.
Mm-hmm.
You now create an engine that can like exceed that 1,000-fold.
Yeah,
you're no longer limited by like a person gets tired, a horse gets tired. You have a machine working. As long as you have somebody feeding it coal, it's going to continue to output at greater and greater quantities, and these make these engines more and more efficient. And that turns into what we have today. Like everything we have that we touch, we interact with, was shaped by an engine.
Of some sort.
So now you look at AI, and because I remember thinking, well, we're in a creative space, Chris. Like,
yeah.
Machines can't take our job because like a machine can't think and predict and create. Well, whether or not you think it's true, it sure as heck looks like AI can create something from an idea.
Yeah, and also most recently, recent pop news, the Willy's Chocolate Land thing in, I think it was in Norway or whatever, like that was all AI generated images for promotion. AI scripts for the actors. Now, none of it was good, and it was a whole disaster. But still, but it's going into those spaces.
It is, and it's only going to get better. And it's not a linear growth; it's an exponential growth. These AI models are training other AI models, and even the act of refining an AI model is now being done by AI. And as these things get smarter and smarter, it's like these engines getting faster and faster, and now you get fission and we're sending people to the moon. Like, you never would have thought that like a general combustion engine would have resulted in us learning how to like create a rocket engine.
Yeah.
We don't yet know the limit to what AI can do, but we're definitely just scratching the surface.
Oh yeah, we're at the base of the mountain here, I think.
So, like, I agree with the bubble people.
The bubble exists.
There is a bubble, but when the bubble pops, it's not going to go away. It's going to still be there.
Yeah. So it's again like the .com one, right? The people that knew how to use it are really going to survive.
Yeah. And I think business owners recognize that, and that's why they're all making a play to like incorporate it. Some will do it successfully, some won't. Businesses will succeed, some will go out of business. That's just the reality of it. So the bubble's real, but I don't think I wouldn't downplay its significance. The other thing too is I believe that what a developer does today is going to look very different than what a developer does in 5-10 years.
Well, I mean, and I think that's again the question right now is like, what does a developer do today?
Yeah, like you're building an app. Like, what do you do? Well, I need to define a schema. And I interpret the schema, right, from a spec.
Yep. Or from acceptance criteria or something like that.
I build a schema out. I create, if you're using any framework, I'm creating that code first scaffolding. I might build a service layer over it, implement a repository, add an API, boom. Chris, I don't think all of what I've said is out of reach from generative AI.
Yeah.
Like
maybe not today 100%, but
yeah, you'd need to do a little.
Once you train it a lot more.
Yeah, it could do it. Just recently, I built. I'm working on a prototype for the Vision Pro. I'm going to a tech conference in July, and I want to highlight what the Vision Pro can do. And ironically, the reason I'm working in the Vision Pro is because I think as a developer, I need to adapt. And this is a new emerging space. Mm-hmm. I don't want to stay complacent in my full stack web development role. So it's like,
right, because not everything's web development.
Got this new tech. Mixed reality is going to be a thing. I'm going to learn it. So I had this idea of analyzing a repository for namespace dependencies as a way to essentially highlight the different modules of an app. And my plan is to create this web of modules that you can step into when you put on this headset, and you can literally see the dependencies of the solution in a way that you can't really in a 2D space.
Right.
I built a 2D sort of prototype of this.
A model
in Python. Yeah, where I processed the code, I analyzed the dependencies, I sort of filtered out the noise, and I mapped it out using bubbles and lines on a SVG, scalable vector graphic, and I did it in Python. I wrote that entire program using ChatGPT in under an hour. Like, I literally just told ChatGPT sort of what I told you, but I did it in a way like I was an architect talking to a senior developer or a mid-level developer. I was telling the architect what functions to write, how to validate them, where to connect them to. I was being the architect, but I was not writing the code.
Right.
And it worked. In 1 hour, I had a working prototype. I took that prototype to my boss. I pitched him the idea, and now I have funding to build this Vision Pro app. I'm really excited about it. But I did that. Without ChatGPT, that would have taken me a day or 2 days or maybe even a week to do. ChatGPT enabled me to do it so much faster.
Right, because Python isn't your native language that you typically use. And not that you don't know it, but...
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with all the libraries and its capabilities, and I just talk to ChatGPT and say, I know I can do this thing. Like, ChatGPT, go make it happen. It's like, oh yeah. And it pulls from all these various sources, and it creates and it's not perfect. You gotta know, like... when to correct it. Yeah. But when you prompt it correctly, it produces working code.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this creates two different, I think this highlights two different dynamics here, right? One is, this is a space that you're not super familiar in. And the one question is, everyone's like, okay, you're going to use it as a learning tool, but like, how much are you actually picking up from this? Like, would you be able to say, like, okay, now I've got this as a start? Like, would I be able to build this myself?
Probably. Like, because I'm reading I'm basically code reviewing it, validating it, testing it, modifying it, but I'm not incurring the cost. Like, I don't need to know how to do a case-insensitive search on an array in Python. Like, I know the concept of,
Yeah, but you don't need to look up the syntax. It's like, just give me that.
Give me this, and I can suss it out because I've been writing code long enough. I know, what to do.
Yeah, or the smells.
I was doing something where I was building out a schema in any framework, and I had that culture invariance error that you get with .NET 8 now, and I just threw that error in ChatGPT. I told it my environment, and it told me exactly what property to edit in the project to avoid this error. Or how to use Docker. I was learning that the other day. Like, I don't go to Google anymore. I go straight to ChatGPT because I can talk to it like a human, and it gives me 9 times out of 10, it's going to give me a good response.
Yeah, and honestly, and I think this emerging space is, like, for what you're saying is, I always kind of poke fun of it, but like, you got your Google skills, right? Like, I'm terrible at it. Like, if I put something in there, I need to search it 5 or 10 times, and then maybe I'll find the thing that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But like in this generative AI space, that whole thing is known as prompt engineering, and really it's just trying to and getting good at that. It's how to communicate. It's really just becoming a better communicator overall.
What's funny is when ChatGPT gives me a bad result, I'll just say no dice, enter, and it knows that I'm saying this did not work.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, and I know I've talked about this, like, when I first started using it on a very small scale, but just about regex, yeah, I know regex enough, but like when you use it, it's once in a blue moon. It's very powerful, but like, saying like, okay, you know what? Here's the things that I want. Here's the things I don't want. I need a regex in this language. Help me figure this out. And it's been pretty good about it. And it's like, okay, it's wrong. Okay, now let me give you some more examples about what's good and what's bad.
Yeah, the generative AI, I feel, is going to transform software development in the same way that the Industrial Revolution transformed construction or manufacturing. And here's my analogy. Let's travel back in time to the 1700s. Mm-hmm. And I were to take 100 dudes and I line them up in a row. And I were to say, raise your hand if you know how to build a house. I bet you 20%, 30% would probably raise their hand.
Minimum.
Because they probably built their house. Building a house was a skill. It was a craft. You needed to know how to do it. You probably built your own house to some degree, or you might have helped. Now, today, if I were to grab 100 guys or gals and I were to say, how many of you know how to build a house? Maybe 1 or 2 people would raise their hand. And they probably would say, well, I know how to roof, or I know how to install windows, or I know how to run electrical. It's specialization. But nobody knows how to just build a house anymore. I think the equivalent is going to happen in the software space.
Yeah.
I think the role of a full stack developer is probably going to go away.
Yeah, and because again, like we said, like you get your user story. It's got the acceptance criteria. It's really just giving you a worded blueprint of what you need to develop.
Converting that to a schema and then entities and then service and API, that's probably at some point going to be fully automated.
Yeah, because in a lot of cases, the industry has changed around SQL in the first place. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? Where do you put your business logic? Well, it's in SQL. Well, that has all changed because now your SQL database has become your data warehouse and all your business logic is in your application. So like in that regard, it's just like, what does it matter?
Yeah, it doesn't. And with things like Docker, you kind of obfuscate the environment away from the deployment, and you got continuous deployment and integration and continuous delivery and integration. All those things are sort of like abstracting away. I don't know where I'm going with this. Needless to say, what a developer does today is probably going to be eliminated to some degree, but there's still going to be the need for that architect or that director who is sort of orchestrating all of these different AI models to create something beautiful that works.
Yeah. So your team isn't, 5 or 10 people that you're getting pizzas for. It's going to be 5 or 10 machines that you're getting graphics cards for.
Yeah. And or like right now you might have a team of 5 working on one product. In the future, you might have 1 or 2 people working on a product, somebody who's using LLMs to like create the code, another who's using them to validate the code. But those other 3 people on that team can now be deployed to make other apps, other projects. But I genuinely believe that every role in software development is in some way, shape, or form going to be leaning on AI as a way to do what they normally would have done with their hands and with their mind.
Yeah. So based on everything that we've been talking about, for those people, right now, the barrier to entry for development is really low.
It's pretty low. Yeah.
Like you can go to YouTube, you can go in a lot of different places to learn how to do it and just do it. And you don't need to know what you're doing necessarily, but you can build, hello world, easiest thing to do.
Yep.
So where do you think that puts us in the future?
I think the barrier to entry, ironically, with AI making it more accessible, I think the barrier to start is going to be higher because the desirable skills are going to be those that are more architectural and less grunt.
How do I do a string invariant?
Yeah, and it's like nobody cares if you know HTML anymore. Like that's not enough. Like there used to be roles where if you just knew HTML, you could do the work. Now you need to know HTML plus Angular to even be relevant. Like
and basic CSS isn't enough, right? Not because now it's less or Sass or things like that.
Yeah, so I genuinely think the barrier to entry with development is gradually getting higher. It's still low now, but it's getting higher. And then ultimately, when you have like these AI models that are doing the work, prompt engineering is going to be
it's going to be a valuable skill.
It is going to be a valuable skill. Like, do I know how to manage? It's funny because like developers are basically going to get turned into managers. Do I know how to manage all of these different AIs? Get them to work together in harmony to create an outcome. That is going to be a skill that I think is going to be very valuable.
And with these agents and other so as we're talking about like the agents with LLMs, what another part of that too is giving them a toolbox. So you got to build tools for them if you're doing something special to and knowing how to integrate those into those LLMs.
Yeah. Creating those toolboxes. Like I saw this one website where you can basically tell the AI what you want. I want an e-commerce site that takes Stripe for payments, has Google Analytics, has dashboarding in a mobile app, and it uses AI to create that. And then through a series of prompting, you can refine that down to a product. And then if it's not perfect, you can pay a developer to do that last round of fine-tuning. But you can get 80% of the way there without even involving a human. But somebody had to build that piece that could get you there.
Right.
Like somebody has to build the factory that generates the Teslas automatically. I think there's still going to be a role for people. It's just going to be a highly skilled position as opposed to we're no longer paying people to turn bolts on a engine. That's all done through machines now. I think software development is probably going to be much the same.
So then what happens with the full stack developer? So aside from them going away and being replaced in this, based on a lot of the industry analogies that we've been doing recently,
they have to adapt. I think if you're a full stack developer right now and you're thinking to yourself, the way that I do work today is going to be the same as it is in 10 years, I think you're going to probably find yourself without a job. Yeah. Or you're going to be competing with a lot of people for a limited number of jobs.
Yeah. And there's nothing to, yeah. Sorry, I was trying to get to the artisanal part of the.
Oh no, we can talk about.
That's what I was trying to segue into, except that now I don't know how to.
No,
do it.
you're like. There will always be an exception to the mass. We'll call it the IKEA model of development. I'm sort of describing the IKEA model.
Well, this is the general 99%, 95% of the workforce, at least developer wise, get on board or you're going to be left behind.
Yes,
but for that other 5%,
yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, so I think in this. So you're talking about again. So everything that we've been talking up to this point, right? It's been kind of like the mass industrial. Everything's going to get faster and all that other stuff, but you still, have the woodworkers that are working with their hands and just using artisanal tools. And I think the developers, some of them are still going to be in that way. And maybe it's in the way of how COBOL is right now. It's just this legacy technology. Things aren't going to be updated. They need somebody specialized for that. Or it's going to be somebody that truly values a unique product. Because I think at some point the generative AI, as you see with things like Squarespace and Wix right now, there's a lot of websites that look very similar.
There's a standardization of it, yeah.
And at some point, you're going to need somebody to do something different, whether that be a UI developer to completely change your CSS or how your UI looks, or a developer to do something highly custom that just doesn't exist.
Let me give you an example. And we're gonna talk about Nintendo for a little bit.
So how far back are you going from Nintendo? From the 1800s?
Not when they were selling trading cards with inappropriate images. We're going to talk about the NES and the SNES, and so think of the evolution of Nintendo and sort of where they've succeeded and where they've failed. They released the NES, it was great. They released the SNES, it was good, but Sega started to sort of gain traction. They were seen as the not so cool company. Then they released the N64. Mm-hmm. And what made the N64 special was they did something that nobody did well, and they created a form factor that nobody dreamed of. Remember the controller with the three little things? Yeah, if you were to ask AI to iterate on the SNES and to create something better, it probably would have made the graphics better, faster, might have even incorporated AI. But the idea of using an analog joystick and these three little things you hold on to
and this is before PlayStation, or around when PlayStation was starting to.
Nintendo created that sort
first,
of.
and then PlayStation came after.
That is an example of an innovation that I don't think AI is going to do, or at least it's not going to do out of the gate.
Because it's not in its space.
Yeah. Now also, and then they released the GameCube, which kind of flopped, and it's because they didn't really iterate on it. They just made a faster version of N64. Then what did they release after the GameCube? They released the Wii. And the Wii was the best-selling console ever.
Right.
Because they did something that was very different. Nintendo, so prior to the Wii, Nintendo was directly competing with PlayStation. They were directly competing with Xbox.
Sega until Sega dropped out and Dreamcast. Yeah.
And they were fighting for market shares. Then Nintendo decides we're going to do something different. We're not going to compete with PlayStation. We're going to sell our product as an addition to. People started buying their Xbox plus a Wii. They didn't view the Wii as a direct competitor because it was unique and novel.
Well, I thought it was because it was trying to go for the casual market rather than.
Sure, but people were buying it in addition to.
Yeah, because there was something different to it.
There was, They also you're right. They also targeted a market that was previously untapped. Again, a novel idea that an AI is not going to do. Then after the Wii, they released the Wii U. You'll notice a trend here. They release a gem and then they release a flop. The Wii U sucked. It was terrible. Nobody wanted it. It was their worst performing console.
Yeah, because again, the iteration wasn't anything, and then they had that weird tablet.
It was weird. Yeah. Then they released the Switch. And they every time Nintendo has been successful, they've completely reimagined the controller. Like first you had the N64, which had this really ergonomic, comfortable look. Then you had the Wii, where you broke free from
because it's
buttons.
all motion control.
And now you have the Switch, where I have a portable, and this further iterates on the idea that we're going to stop competing with PlayStation. Everybody who has a PlayStation probably has a Switch. Everybody who has an Xbox probably has a Switch. Nintendo sort of stepped out of the ring and said, no, we're going to sell this other thing that all of our competitors are going to buy. All of
all the people that buy our competitors
are going to buy.
Supplement.
And they broke out of it. So I tell this analogy because that level of thinking, I believe, is still going to reside with the human. I don't believe, and it's because of how AI is trained. It's trained to predict based on information that it has consumed. But the novel idea, the thing that's never existed,
won't be in that
won't
space.
be there. Yeah. Now, it's not to say that it'll never get that way. I know enough now to never say never. But right now, that space is still unclaimed by AI. And that is, I think, where we need to learn to live. And in order to successfully operate in that space, that creative space, we have to leverage AI to do it.
Yeah, and this is again being the architect, right? Because you need to come up with the solution and telling it how to. Again, you're acting as that director to tell it, I need you to go do these things.
Yeah. So imagine the case of the Switch. You're talking to an AI and you're saying, look, I want to break free from the confines of a traditional controller. I want multiple forms of control. I want motion capture, and I want it to fit within this nice compact design. It's probably going to give you some ideas that you can iterate and refine on in a way that you would normally have to go to a team of designers and say, here's my prompt.
Yep.
And they get back to you in a month or a week. And now you can get that instantly from the AI brain, and you can iterate on that in a matter of hours versus a matter of years or a matter of months.
Yeah. And then you could probably hopefully put it into some sort of, usability testing right away.
Yeah. So that's, I think, the place we need to be. You're right. There's always going to be a place for the artisanal craft, handcrafted software.
Yeah.
I think that is still going to be, that'll probably be a badge of honor to some degrees.
But it'll be very niche.
Yeah. But for the developer who's currently doing their 9 to 5 and doing full stack, and they're like, I don't want to be an architect. I don't want to be a designer. I don't want to worry about product. I worry for those developers because I don't think their jobs are going to be as plentiful in the future. Like you're going to have to be a developer who cares about product, who cares about design, who cares about architecture. And if you're not, I don't think you're going to find yourself employed in 20 years or 10 years.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. And this is my hot take. I could be wrong. Like I look at how the engine has transformed jobs. It changed the way people lived, where they lived, how they worked, like everything. It changed how we ate. Like the engine has touched every single part of our lives. This is a mental engine. This is not a physical engine. This is a mental engine, and it's going to have profound impact, whether we like it or not.
Yep.
So, sorry, that's my rant.
Nope, I am complete agreement with that.
So, what is your advice to developers, maybe people that are like early in their career?
So, if you listen to this whole thing, so there's going to be a couple things. The idea of the architecture, like there's still going to be a need for data extraction, and there's probably going to be validation or something to get quote unquote clean data, because if you're going to tell right now as things exist, it's not going to be good at that. It's just going to dump it into a database and be like, yeah, I got the data there and I can load it and save it.
Data sanitation, though, I think is a achievable problem with AI. Like you got the
Is it reportable data?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is like have you heard of the ML factories? They have entire factories that can build AI models, and it's completely autonomous. Now they suck right now. They're not good.
Yeah.
But through a series of iterations, and data cleansing is one of the first steps in that.
Yeah.
That'll probably be like, as long as you tell it the outcome, it can sanitize data
to get it in that
format. Yeah. So right now, maybe in the next 20 years, sure, but you're right. In the immediate,
to kind of like where would I think you're safe in the space? I guess, right. There's the 1 year, 5 year, 20 year.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the immediate right now is that, at least up through at least a 5 year, learning how to use the LLMs yourself, so there's plenty of resources out there. I already, I've talked about the huggingface.co for getting the models. You can use LangChain, which I know this is a whole other divisive conversation. There's another counter to that.
What is LangChain?
So LangChain, it's not anonymizes. I want to
obfuscates.
Not obfuscate. Well, it's part of obfuscation. It's LangChain is a tool to agnostically use different LLMs.
Oh.
So it essentially it's essentially a wrapper around all these different kind of models that have different formats and things like that.
Oh, so it abstracts away.
Yeah.
Whatever.
The connections, and then you're just like, I'm going to ask my prompt, and then it's just going to throw it to whatever it needs to do. And that's the thing. And so like the agents aren't part of LLM, right? So like the LLM it doesn't have state, right? So it is just processing, and it is just a brain. So you still need something to do state. You still need a product to communicate. You still need something to do that. So you got to build those connections.
That is the chat part of the GPT. The chat is the agent. The GPT is the model, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, right. So the GPT, it doesn't know anything, but the chat is the thing that's storing your chat history and stuff like that. So I think fundamentally understanding how that works is going to help you weave in and out to help identify what it will or will not be good at, especially going in the future. And that's why I think computer science is going to help guide that as well, because that's going to help you understand the fundamentals. Or
would you go so far as to say, if you're on the fence of software engineering versus computer science, go computer science?
Yeah, because I think computer science is a lot more theory, research, theoretical,
which will be more value in the future,
right? Because I think that could either help get better refine the LLM, or at least help you understand how the LLM connects and things like that work.
That's if you're on the fence. You can still go the software engineering route. Just know that there's probably going to be less opportunities in this space versus the computer science space.
Yeah, that's what I think anyway. And maybe I'm biased because I have a computer science degree, but so I think that's a good place to start.
No, I like that. Like what you're basically saying to all of the aspiring software engineers is you can no longer avoid computer science, or you will no longer be able to avoid it. Like you're going to have to learn theory if you want to stay relevant. You're going to have to learn data structures and things that in the past, if you wanted to be a quote unquote full stack, it's like the boot camps, the dev code boot camps, like those.
Those teach you, so it's a difference between an engineer and a developer, I think.
Yeah.
Like a developer is, or I guess programmer, I guess I should say. A programmer is, I know how to program, I know how to write code.
That's a good way to frame it. The programmer is probably gone.
Yeah, the engineer isn't.
Yeah.
Or the engineer is, is a tool to the tool belt.
You notice like we don't call ourselves programmers anymore? Like I don't know anybody that calls themselves. If I look at a job description and it's like I need a senior programmer, like I just inherently know that is an archaic
Yeah.
job. Like I would never want to touch it. But if it's a software engineer or even developer, like I know that it's probably working in a modern stack. It's probably using emerging technologies. But a programmer job, no, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah. I think, for as scary as this is probably for a lot of people, to me, it's very exciting.
Yeah. Let's remember, when the Industrial Revolution happened, the middle class was created. More jobs were created than were lost. The quality of life improved for almost everybody. You got the 8-hour workday was instituted.
Yeah. The unions, I think, were started then.
This is going to be good, but it's going to be painful. And we just have to not resist this whole like idea of AI and generative AI. We have to learn to live with it because it is coming, whether we want it to or not. Yeah. It is going to be here.
And because we don't know what it's going to look like, this is our time to shape it into what we need it to be.
Yeah, not like iRobot or Terminator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not let it build
Don't
itself.
Don't ask the AI how to solve world hunger because it's just going to kill everybody.
And that's a solution.
Yeah.